Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Motor City Madmouth Show. You get it. I'm the Motor City Madmouth, and who do I have alongside of me? Got Smoking Jeremy Ballrick. Welcome to the big show.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
And George Acorn. Am I starting to sound like a little Michael Buffer here, or what?
Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, you do.
We'll have a great agenda lined up today. We're talking to the Lions 24-14 winner with the Packers. Talk about Za Darius Smith finally made the trade. Not that I had any doubts they'd make it in the first place. And I had a special conversation with Kenny Albert of Fox as well as TBS. So I'll talk and reminisce a little bit about that. We'll tell you right now that the our show here, the Motor City Man Mouth, is presented by Lessons from the Microphone, tuning into the enduring wisdom of visionary leaders. That's a book that yours truly I wrote, and hope you can get it out there. It's on Amazon, Kindle, as well as Barnes and Noble. Also, want to give a shout out to my friend Kenny Albert, who wrote a book himself, A Mic for All Seasons. Okay, this is the type of book that will give me ideas for my second book, Lessons from the Microphone Part 2, and I had a great interview with him earlier in the week. So Kenny was very great, and I just want to show my appreciation for him coming out earlier in the week. With that said, let's go to the agenda. The Lions 24, the Packers 14. It really should have been 24 to what? Six. But all right, Jeremy, we'll lead it off with you. Let's talk about what transpired on Sunday, other than the fact that I got the best of Katie Ebling here at the house. Much
An
to you.
applause to you.
Yeah,
An
I'm
applause
sure.
to you, sir. The Lions looked like the team they have been. They were running away with this game, and instead of running the score up, because it was a revenge game of sorts, because the Packers acted like last year's Thanksgiving game was the Super Bowl. Hey, we beat you in your house. Well, this is the third straight time we beat them in the house, and the first time ever in Lions history. We beat them three straight in Lambeau. So that being said, it's what we expected. This defense is predicated on giving up yards between the 20s, clamping down in the red zones, and forcing turnovers, which is exactly what they did. And we're not turning the ball over. If you win the turnover game, you're going to win the game 90% of the time.
Well, yeah, bad weather. They certainly did what they had to do by running the football. David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs, without a doubt, certainly took advantage of the fact that the Lions were leaning more on the run. And they also had to keep Jared Goff from getting hurt. Those are the types of games that you worry about your quarterback getting hurt. The Lions were able to overcome that.
They played in bad weather. I didn't notice. They still scored 24 points without a problem.
Yeah, right. All right, a little bit of sarcasm, but that's okay. I love sarcasm like that because when we state the obvious, Ballrick's got a line here. Boy, you have some pretty good mentors in your day, Ballrick. Let me tell you. All right, George, what's your take on Sunday?
Well, you throw anything at the Lions and they seem to overcome it. The whole talk was about the weather conditions and what was going to happen. How are you going to play sloppy? Can they even do that? Goff is a dome quarterback, not dumb, I said, dome quarterback. All that stuff leading up to the game, which was just a bunch of hooey. Yeah, they didn't score 30 or 40 or 50 in this game, but they didn't have to because the defense came through and did the job that they had to do. And you talked already about the running game. Unbelievable, these two guys. And it's just one game, one win. They take it. Like I said, you throw anything at the Lions right now, they seem to be able to overcome it. And that's a good thing if you're a Detroit Lions fan. 7-1. Couldn't ask for any much better than that right now. Of course, 8-0 would have been nice, but 7-1 is the best record, as we know, in the NFC. They're just playing great. They're playing on all cylinders, and like you said, the defense is coming through, and it has to. I like what I see so far. Definitely a good win for Detroit.
Great comment, George, when you talk about overcoming anything. What about Brian Branch getting thrown out of the game? My goodness. I mean,
Yeah.
but you know what? Felt that they could get around that. I really did. I like Brian Branch's intensity and the fact that he plays hard. All right, so he gets thrown out. Remember a guy by the name of Dominican Sue? He was
Yep.
not a choir boy either. So I don't think the Lions are particularly worried about choir boys, are they? So Brian Branch, you know what? I was joking around with Candy that the one thing about the about Brian Branches when he got sent to the locker room. He's one guy that wasn't going to get hurt at Lambeau Field, and it's safe to say that maybe the officials did him a favor. The Lions come up with a win nonetheless. All right, now the most obvious move that we expected to happen finally took place at the NFL trade deadline. Detroit landing Za Darius Smith, who has actually 20, I think it was 3 tackles and 5 sacks this season. The defensive end is a 3-time Pro Bowler. The Lions are trading, as I understand, this comes from WXYZ in Detroit. Okay, a 2026 fifth rounder, a 2026 sixth rounder, and a 2026 seventh rounder. No, okay, so that's why I mentioned the
Okay.
source. So clarify
Um,
the details, Jeremy.
we traded a fifth rounder and a sixth rounder for Zadarius Smith and got a seventh rounder in return. So, and the Browns already paid him $11.5 million of his salary in guaranteed money this year. So the Lions get him the rest of the year for $605,000. And because he was paid that guaranteed money up front with the signing bonus and everything else, we get him at a fraction of the price for next year, too.
Okay. Well, again, I disclose sources of where I get the information, and then I go to my crew, which obviously they know what they're talking about, anyways. Okay, and we make sure we get it right, and that's what it's all about. So, all right, George. So let me ask you this, Jeremy. The Lions knew they were going to get Darius Smith. Were they holding out a little bit longer to see if the asking price would come down?
Well, the original asking price was a fourth rounder. They wanted him to agree to less, a fifth and a sixth. When we don't have a third round pick, doesn't hurt you as much as that fourth round would. Now, remember, we were talking to them even before Aiden Hutchinson got hurt, was when the rumors came out that we were talking to the Browns for Zadarius Smith, and that was prior to the Cowboys game.
Okay.
Those talks heated up as it went along, but Brad Holmes, whether you want to call him Dollar Store Brad or Dollar General Brad, he doesn't like to overpay, and he hasn't yet.
Well, it's funny you mentioned it. I told my brother who was so in on Max Crosby, Lonnie, Max isn't going to go there. The Raiders are asking way too much, and there's no way Brad Holmes is going to do it. The guy you're going to have to watch out for is Darius Smith. And I haven't talked to him since because it was just over the weekend, but I'm sure I'll have that conversation over the weekend.
When that conversation about Max Crosby came up between us,
I'm
I
sorry.
actually, when that question came up about the Max Crosby thing, before Mark Davis, the week prior to the deadline, emailed every single owner and said, Max Crosby's not on the table for multiple first-team players. I said Zadarius Smith's name when I talked about the guys we'd go for. I said Azeez Ojulari, and we talked to the Giants till basically 3:30 in the afternoon, and they couldn't come to a deal. I said Bryce Huff of the Eagles, who we didn't contact. And a name I didn't even think of was Carl Granderson, the defensive end from the Saints. We talked to them, but we also were inquiring about getting Marshawn Lattimore, but the Commanders won that bidding war, and they decided not to deal Carl Granderson, which with Cameron Hayward, Cameron Jordan getting up there in age
All right.
and not playing as well as he used to, they really can't afford to get rid of him because that's a guy that could be the cornerstone of their defense during the rebuild with 2 years left on his contract.
Okay. All right, George, what's your take on this?
Well, yeah, I think it's a great acquisition by Detroit. I mean, they obviously needed some help with Hutchinson down, and even what you mentioned, Jeremy, even before that. I mean, there was a lot of pressure on the Lions to make a move and to get some more help for the pass rush. And this guy's a Pro Bowler. I mean, he's got 5 sacks already, solo sacks this year. He's a good guy. Cleveland is just horrible this year, and I figured that the Lions would be able to pull some good deal with them, and they did. So yeah, there was that negotiation that went on. You're right. I heard about that too. The fourth round, but Brad held his ground, and the Lions came up with somebody that can really help them, and that's the important thing because we're talking about getting to the Super Bowl. We're not talking about winning one playoff game anymore in Detroit. Those days are gone. So they obviously wanted to beef up that line, and they did. They did a good job. I just hope he stays, healthy and adds that punch that Detroit needs.
Well, the Detroit Lions were fortunate that these last few weeks that they were able to manage a win game, but you can only live on that for so long until at some point not the lack of a pass rush is going to bite you. So I had a feeling a deal was going to be made by Tuesday. It was just a matter of ironing out the compensation for both sides were happy. And let me tell you something, Jeremy, you got your first opportunity to cover an NFL draft. And I think you realize being there in person, right? That day three is every bit as important as those first couple of days, isn't it, Jeremy?
Yes, sir. 100%. We talked about it. Mikai Wingo has been a contributor on this defense already and improving every game.
Right.
Uh, Christian Mahogany is finally on the active roster again after dealing with some illness that they have not disclosed. Nobody knows. But with as long as it was, I wouldn't have been surprised if it was an appendectomy type of thing because it's
Right.
about the right length to recover from that type of surgery to get to where you're practicing again. And that's the only reason why I'm saying that because it was listed as illness. And that's the only thing I could think of is appendicitis or long COVID. That's the two things that would take that long. We did get some good news out of the practice area today. Since Zadarius Smith, if he'd have been a Brown, would be on his bye week. Dan Campbell says he's not practicing today or tomorrow, so he can get his rest. They're going to evaluate him on Friday, which means more than likely he's not going to be a starter, but he's at least going to be a role player and provide some
Right.
pressure. And I think that's very smart. Why make him come in and try to learn that playbook all at once and have him start and be the three down guy right away?
Well, let's face the reality. Dan Campbell's in his fourth year with the job, right? So
Yep.
as a
Yep.
result, you'd like to think he's learned a few things here in the only in his fourth year, but don't lose sight of the fact that once upon a time Dan Campbell was the interim coach for the Miami Dolphins, and they were 5-7. Don't you think the Miami Dolphins are looking at Dan Campbell and think, "Oops, we should have hired this guy"? Well, guess what? They
Yeah.
didn't.
It
Didn't he
didn't
take
happen. No.
didn't he take over for an 0-7 Joe Philbin and got them 5 wins in the next game?
Absolutely. That was my
Okay.
next point. But great
The
minds think alike. You beat me to the punch, but that's okay.
but
Yeah.
the other good news we got on the practice front is Emmanuel Mosley and Ifeatu Melifonwu had their 21-day active window reinstated today, and they're practicing with the team.
That's good. Good news. Yeah.
More depth
Definitely.
in that secondary.
Yep.
And remember when CJGJ was hurt and then Tracy Walker went out from week 13 until week 17, Ifeatu Melifonwu was the best blitzing safety in the league.
Okay, fair enough. All right, George, anything else you want to add to this?
No, I just, like I said, it's been a really good week for Detroit, and that's the best thing to do is give him a couple days off, Smith, because yeah, he missed his bye week, so I don't have a problem with that at all. And like you said, Jeremy, I mean, you can't. Great minds think alike. Yeah, that's true because I thought about the same thing. You can't have a guy understand and learn the playbook in just 2 days or whatever. So I would imagine, yeah, they'll be very selective when they bring him in on Sunday and just give him a chance to fit into the organization. And that's going to be a tough game down in Houston, anyways. But they'll be ready for it.
Okay, well, you know what we're going to do? I don't talk politics, and I really don't, but I just want to ask a simple question, and I'll give you my answer in a moment. What was your takeaway from the presidential election yesterday?
When Donald Trump was up 28-3, he didn't become the Atlanta Falcons and lose the lead.
That was funny. Great stuff. I like when you come up with that. A man knows how to come up with a lighthearted situation. This is what I know guys like you, Ballrick, are really starting to mature. And I think I've brainwashed you really well to become a pretty good commentator. So,
Uh,
but that's okay. I liked it. That was good. All right. What about you, George?
well, I was still surprised. I did not figure that it would come down to that to be. It wasn't a runaway, but I mean to take all those states that were up in the air, so close, too close to call. So many states, including my own and including Candy's own too, Wisconsin and Michigan, of course, we're referring to. But the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of people that voted that normally don't vote. A lot of people came out, a lot of young people, a lot of different ethnic groups, and I give both candidates credit. I mean, they traveled and tried to get their message out to everybody that would hear it, and it's a rare time when you bring back a president a second time with not consecutive years in between. So, congratulations to him.
All right, my only takeaway has nothing to do with the results. It to me, it went ahead and brought back a Frank Reynolds sighting. Okay, lessons from the microphone. And I'll tell you why I'm asking this question is because when I see a Frank Reynolds sighting, let me clarify that. And by the way, you can get this book on Amazon Kindle and Barnes and Noble, and there's the online version as well. But we're going to talk about the federal communications. I watched it on ABC, and I wasn't worried about the results, but ABC did a good job broadcasting it because once they found out that they were comfortable announcing the projected winner, they did it. They didn't rush to it and have to take it down. That's a one lesson in my book that Frank Reynolds taught me was I don't want to get it first. I want to get it right. And that to
Absolutely.
me is what my takeaway is. So I'm not expressing any sort of political stance here. But the one thing I also talk about in my book is let's just get it right, folks. That's all we have to do is just simply get it right. And ABC did not rush to anything until they felt that the information they were comfortable delivering it. And believe it or not, I don't stay up that late, but I actually watched this thing until 3 o'clock in the morning and then went to bed. But I
Wow.
was, yeah, but I was again reason why I'm watching wasn't so much for the results. I want to see the presentation of how something is done. And that'll even go back to my days when I was watching ABC News Nightline when you have Al Campanis saying things he shouldn't have said with Ted Koppel on Nightline. And I don't have to get into the detail, but Mr. Campanis was unemployed pretty quickly. All right. So my final thought for the night is going to be what occurred on Monday night on my network. Kenny Albert did a great one-on-one interview with him for 25 minutes. He obviously brought up with his dad. You know, he had a tape recorder in his hands at the age of 5. And it's great when you have a parent involved where you can follow in their footsteps. But this guy isn't just no normal individual. He's way above that. Kenny is a resilient work ethic, a very personable injury. Wait, personal injury. What am I thinking about? Like broke up? No, he's a very personable person, and he talks about 3 decades in the business and covering 150 events every year in the travel. But I've gotten to know him on a couple of occasions over the NHL All Star Game, and then reconnected with him over the summer in North Carolina for the National Sports Media Association. And we get along real well, and what can I say? I try to get along with as many people as I can, but the point that I'm mentioning is when you have relationships, which is something I talk about a lot, right, Jeremy, in my book, and right, George, in my book, this is exactly what you try to do, build relationships, and hopefully those individuals are kind enough to be able to come on your platform and tell their story. So the thing I'm going to say about Kenny's book is I'm looking forward to getting into it when things slow down a little bit more during the holiday season because it'll certainly provide me with some ideas or lessons from the microphone part too. That was my highlight of the week. And again, you know, I'll put it up one more time because I want to do it. A mic for all seasons, Kenny Albert. And this guy has done wonders. And what can I say? It was a privilege to have him on this platform. So, Jeremy, what was your highlight of the week?
My highlight of the week being called an asshole because I voted the way I did.
You calling that a highlight or a low light?
Oh no, that's a highlight because if anybody is going to call somebody as a person a degrading name, that shows how low their intelligence is.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. All right, George, what about yours?
Well, mine just goes back to sports once again. The chance for Jared at Lambeau Field. This guy is
Oh, that
number
was great.
one in completion percentage in the NFL, 74.9, 14 touchdowns. He ranks ninth in touchdowns. You won't find him as number one in this category, in that quarter, in that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The overall body of work, let's call it, like we all know, we've used that term before in sports and in other things we've worked on in our lives. But the overall body of work puts Jared Goff as number one, and it's incredible. He's bought into this team. The team's bought into him. His teammates, everything. He's got a beautiful wife. He got married in the off season. I mean, he's sitting pretty right now, but the guy doesn't have an ego. He doesn't have an ego. He leaves it, if he does, he leaves it at the in the locker room or whatever before he comes on the field. So Jared Goff again, just an amazing performance, of course, and I think the Lions are hell bent to win it all this year. Let's see if it can happen, but he's getting them into the right position that they need to be in right now. And like I said, the chants of Jared still ring in everybody's ears that follows the Lions
Well,
or follows the Packers, as we heard at Lambeau.
as much as I don't like to watch TV a whole lot because I think a lot of the times the sound really gives me migraines. Every now and then, what I will do is look at national shows just to try to get national reaction, right, Jeremy, about what other people around the country are saying. And I think it's been intriguing just to see. Again, I'm not jumping on as a fan or anything like that. That has absolutely nothing to do with that. But the bottom line is, you do like to get an idea where they are nationally with their reputation. And the reason why you do is because it, number one, helps us feed these shows a little bit. But not only that, okay, I think it's just so important to realize that, you know what, this team has been laughed at for so long. It's about time that they can finally go out there and see that things can be positive if they do exactly what they're doing. And that's the main whole thing about it.
Yeah,
But again, I'm not going to sit there and take them to the Super Bowl yet. They're going to have to earn it. The only thing that happened with them this week is the worst kept secret with Za Darius Smith became a reality. And this situation reminded me a little bit of when the Detroit Tigers went out there and signed Pudge Rodriguez. We all knew the Tigers wanted him and they were going to do it. It's just a matter of sometimes, you
And
know, when they go out there and announce these type of transactions, and that's what we were looking at here. But I think what impresses me about this guy is he's played against with the Packers and the Vikings twice. And now he's with the Lions, so there'll be, we call him an edge rusher, but he'll have a little bit more of an edge as well. I'll be curious to see how it works out. But I think you're right, Jeremy, without a doubt. Okay, Dan Campbell isn't stupid. Okay, he'll break him in a little bit easier. The guy should have a regular bye week, but obviously he changed uniforms. But I don't think that's going to matter. Dan will know when to get him in, and I think you'll see him up at full speed a week from now. But you never know what can happen on Sunday. I'm certainly looking forward. But keep in mind, though, the Lions game on Sunday is at night, on Sunday night football. You're not putting him in at 1 o'clock. You're talking about at night. So, when you talk about I don't think he gets in the game if it's at 1. But when you have a few extra hours to rest, maybe there's a puncher's chance that he does play, like you say, as a role player.
well, I do have some interesting stats for you.
Okay, I'll take it.
Red zone defense, the Lions are tied for ninth in the league right now.
okay.
The Texans are 30th, giving up almost 70% scoring in the red zone.
Wow.
Passing wise,
Unbelievable.
the Lions have 15 touchdowns this year. The Texans have 7.
Well, don't worry, it isn't going to get any easier with Stephon Diggs out for the year either.
Right, and Nico Collins may be returning. It depends. He was limited in practice for walkthroughs today. When you're limited for walkthroughs, that's not a good sign, people. We've seen this before. When a guy is limited on a walkthrough practice, if they don't get full practice by Friday, they're not playing.
Well, you said the magic words, if they don't by Friday, so we'll see what happens tomorrow and the next day.
Right.
And the one thing that everybody should learn about NFL injury reports is this: don't believe them. Just don't.
Yeah, yeah. Just like Jair Alexander might play on Sunday is what they said on Friday.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
George, don't hold your breath. Let me tell you something, Jeremy. George and I have been in enough NFL press boxes over the years. And I'm going to tell you right now, everything that you listen to during the week, by the time they get ready to release the actives versus inactives, it all goes out the window.
Your stature and your demeanor in the way you answer a question when you're a coach usually tells you everything. When he was asked about Jordan Love, he stood tall, shoulders back, looked
Right.
them all in the eye. when they asked about Jair Alexander, he kind of slunk down, looked down at his notes. He goes, "Yeah, maybe."
Well, you know what, Jeremy? What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get you to come down to my neck of the woods and go to a Toastmasters, and then you could go out there and talk about body language in the NFL. I'll have to do that one of these days if you're ever in the area.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that's the one thing you never see out of Dan Campbell is a change in how he approaches the podium.
Yeah.
Whether it's good, bad, or ugly, he approaches his stance exactly the same way. Well, it helps when you're the size of Hulk Hogan and you're looming over the thing the way he does, because he always looks like he's ready to go into the game and tackle somebody now.
I have never seen a Lions coach on local television every single night. He's on channel 24762 every single night. You never did that ever happen, obviously, because they're winning. Everybody wants to hear what that man has to say, even if it is just a sound clip, a sound bite. So
Right.
it's amazing. I'm glad you brought that up, Jeremy, because you're right. He doesn't play any hunches. He doesn't show you any of his cards, like you said, in his demeanor, in his body language, that sort of thing. Very good
Now,
point.
as far as his face is concerned, that's a different story. Because
Oh yeah, well,
when we lose a tough game, he is not afraid to show that it hurt him because he hurts for his players. That's how much he loves his players, and people don't
yep.
get that. And that's why these players, even these practice squad players, run through walls for him. And while we're all complaining about the pass rush, I want to bring up a couple of key stats over the
Sure.
last 3 weeks before we get off the air.
Sure.
Pressure wise, we've averaged 13 QB hurries a game without Hutchinson. We had 10 a game with him. That's pretty telling at how good the defense was schemed up to look different, even though it wasn't pressures like we're used to seeing. It wasn't as pretty. They were more on the coverage style. And this team right now, defensively, reminds me of that second Super Bowl win with Tom Brady after the defense fell off a little bit with the Patriots. They were bottom 10 in yardage, but they were top 10 in scoring defense, top 10 in red zone defense, top 10 in third down stopping. That's exactly what this defense is doing. It's a bend, don't break. We're going to let you eat between the 20s, and once you get to the red zone, good luck.
Okay, let me point out one thing that you were talking about, and I'm going to elaborate. I've never seen a coach do push-ups during training camp either until this guy came around. So
Push
Yeah.
up, downs. He
yeah,
runs next to him
yeah.
on the field when they get a big run. You know, that was the coolest thing I saw at training camp. Is Gibbs broke one off and broke a tackle at Terrion Arnold, who's actually statistically one of the best tackling corners on the team right
All
now.
right, but don't take away from my thunder. I said the guy would do a push-up. Seriously,
I
really? Is that
know.
what it took for me to get me seriously? And really, because you did it.
And he ran right next to him and barely lost ground on fast Jameer Gibbs.
Okay. All right, well, push-ups, people. That's all I'm telling
Yeah,
this guy.
that's
Push-ups.
right, Scott.
He
You
did
stick.
all the things you were saying you would do, but yeah. But I had at least you left me an opening for the push-ups, is what you did.
Yes,
Good
I
job.
did.
That's right.
All right, once again, Motor City Mad Mouth Show. My name is Scott Morgan, the Motor City Mad Mouth. We'd be joined by Spoken Jeremy B. As George Icor. We bring you this show every Wednesday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We talk Michigan sports, and every now and then we'll slip in a national topic if it applies, because we don't like to leave any stone unturned, but we can't lose sight of our origination. So, with that said, I hope everybody's enjoyed this show tonight, and I just want to thank my co-hosts for continuing coming on every week at the same time. As hope everybody has an opportunity to watch the show and give us your report card next Wednesday, because it'll be an interesting game. Detroit at Houston. Albeit Stephen Diggs won't be alive. I'm not going to ask guys to make predictions. I really don't care. Predictions are predictions. But on behalf of Spoken Jeremy B. and George Eichhorn, my name is Scott Morgan, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Motor City Madmouth Show, and we will see you next Wednesday. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. Bye now.
Bye-bye.